What is going on, everyone? Welcome to Comics League Halo Wednesdays. So today, I've been hyping this episode up for a while. So first thing I'm going to do is review the Halo show from episodes 2 and on, because I did 2 last episode. I did 1 and 2 last episode of this. So my basic thesis of this episode is that the Halo show is not as bad as people think it is. Now, let me put in an addendum here. There are major points of this show that I do not like. I'm saying the show in general, as a show, is pretty good. Now, let me explain. All right, episode 4 was boring. I will admit that. Episode 4 was completely boring. It's just Chief doing stuff. But here's the thing, though. And I'm going to address this way. So one of the other series that was held up by fans by comparison, in other words, one of the series that fans were comparing this show to are Halo 4 Until Dawn. 4 of those 5 episodes, no action. Is it 4? Yeah, 4 of those 5 episodes are not action-packed. Well, yeah, about 4. The point is, most of those episodes are not action-packed. So the whole criticism about how the show spent 4 episodes without any action, that's done. It doesn't work, because if you're holding up this show that has so far just as much action as this show, you have to be consistent here, guys. I don't know what to tell you. No, also, that's a sneeze. Also, excuse me. All right. Also, when you read a Halo novel, there are chapters. There's periods that are chapters long where there's no action. So they're writing this like a Halo novel, which is fine. And they even said, by the way, I don't want to hear any more about the whole, oh, they didn't read the books or play the games. They didn't say that. That was taken out of context. What they actually said is that they started at the games and then expanded into the other lore. That was taken out of context by the journalist that was interviewing them. Big surprise. But anyway, then we get to episode 5. So episode 4, they find the second Forerunner artifact. It's on Eridanus 2. The Chief interacted with it when he was a kid. So, and the Covenant at the same time with Maquis are looking for the artifact. So they're on Madrigal in the cave from episode 1. Back in Eridanus 2, Chief interacts with the artifact again, and more of his memories are restored to the point where he starts to remember that he was kidnapped by the UNSC to be put into the Spartan program. At the same time, that artifact sends out a signal that is heard by Maquis and the Covenant, so they know that Eridanus 2 has the artifact. So the Covenant launched an all-out attack on the UNSC, and one of the coolest fight scenes of the entire show so far. We got Banshees. We got like the Spartans running alongside a Warthog. We got the Chief boarding a Banshee. We got Jackals, Grunts, Jackals fighting with energy daggers, which were so cool. And we got, which was one of the coolest scenes ever. So the Chief takes a Banshee, rams it into a Phantom, kills the Covenant. Then he gets up, it's Covenant survivors, and he has to go save Kai because Kai's one of the other Spartans. She took out her emotional pellet thing, and she was like overwhelmed by combat, and that's actually explainable because it's like when you spend so much longer like suppressing emotions, and when you all of a sudden are put in this situation, it pretty much indicates that this person could have like a reaction like that. When people are comparing it, saying Spartans wouldn't react that way, in the games, in the main canon, Spartans don't have their emotions suppressed. I'm like, what? Going back to what I was saying. So the Chief goes full God mode and annihilates Covenant to the point where, so this elite starts like beating up Kai. Chief tackles him to the ground and punches his face in before he curb stomps him. And then Chief goes after the artifact, and then a brute chieftain shows up, which it's been theorized was Atriox, like a younger Atriox, which that'd be cool if they link it. He did look very similar to Atriox, the character design at least. Then the artifact escaped. So Chief going after Kai actually jeopardized the mission. So that's interesting, and that's a result of the Chief taking out his own emotional pellet. And then Maquis lands and is like, "Help me!" She's trying to get in with the UNSC. That's what I think. That's basically the episode in a nutshell. Now, this episode, so much action and so much like callback to the lore. So many callbacks to the games, like the shield sound and stuff, which was so cool. Now, this is where it gets to my argument. Now, first off, this is not taking place in the main timeline. Granted, there are parts of this timeline that I don't like. Like, I don't like Miranda Keyes, the way they do her, because she was supposed to be the strong naval commander, and they make her just a scientist. Because Miranda Keyes was like the commander of the Amber-class ship. I believe she was like one of the youngest to get her own command. So if you'll read the Halsey journal, led the assaults on Installation 05, which was the second Halo ring from Halo Wars from Halo 2, and the assault on the Ark in Halo 3, and then died valiantly. This one is just a scientist, a rebellious teenage scientist. I'm like, why should I care? I don't mind Jacob Keyes because honestly, I like how he was apparently more in line, more like in league with the Spartan program than in the regular camp, because in the Spartan program, he was just a security escort that was escorting Halsey to all these planets to scout the kids. In this, oh no, he seems a little more shady. Case in point, when Chief goes to him and says, "I've been having these memory flashes. I don't know what's going on." And then he goes immediately to Halsey and Parangoski saying, "Chief, starting to figure it out." Excuse me. Anyway, so I like that characterization. And also, Halsey is fantastic. That is exactly the way Halsey is in the books and the main lore. In terms of Chief, all right, the only parts I don't like, let me put it this way. Armor looks great. The helmet taking off doesn't bother me as much. What does bother me is when he takes it off and puts it back on, takes it on, puts it back off. At that point, it seems to me like the writers are giving a middle finger to the fans, and that's not okay. I'm like, okay, guys, you might want to just cool it, okay? That's my only critique. Besides that, armor looks great. I like Pablo Schreiber's a Master Chief. I think he's good. He carries that gruff, kind of emotionless attitude that you'd expect from the Master Chief. So I'm fine with his portrayal of John. And that's fantastic, as a matter of fact. Now, those are things I like. So one other part that I didn't touch on because I hate it is anything that has to do with Quan, because at this point she was supposed to be this character to show what's going on in the larger universe with the humans, but it's got to the point where every episode is a slog whenever it goes to her, and it's always out of nowhere. So I'm like, why should I care about Quan now? Because he pretty much wrapped up her arc. She went to Magical and they told her, okay, no, we're good, we're in league with the UNSC, and she's like, I'm gonna fight even if I'm the only one fighting. And I'm like, yeah, that's gonna last. She's the most unlikable, boring character I have ever seen in Halo. So that's where I agree with the criticism. Now on to the lack of action. Here's the thing. A show can't be like this big action fest constantly. It seems to me like Halo fans are expecting the show to be like every episode, fight the Covenant, and occasionally some dialogue and all that stuff, which you can have that, and this episode proves it. I do really hope, though, that the rest of the season is going to have more action interspersed, because let me put it this way. To a certain degree, I do agree with the criticism that there was too little action, because when you have this many things, it starts to get kind of slow. So I do get that part of the criticism. I don't think it's just my main part about that criticism is that it's disingenuous, because if you watch Forward Unto Dawn, particularly if you watch it as a movie, the first I'd say hour of that movie is, guess what? No action. It's just them hanging out at school. It's only the last half hour when the Covenant show up, the Chief comes up and takes out the Covenant. The other part that I really take issue with is fans keep trying to say this is not game accurate, it's not lore accurate. Guys, this is an alternate timeline. They did this. Let me put it this way. Think about it this way. They did it in the Silver timeline, so they don't have to worry about messing up the canon that we all come to know and love that's in all those encyclopedias over there. So they said, let's just do it here. That way we can give more writing freedom per se, and then just do it that way. And also, this is partly how you get more people into the Halo universe. Like, take this point. Most people that are Marvel fans today are Marvel fans because of the MCU. That successfully, like, I don't want to say standardized. I guess the word's not coming to me. It basically standardized the Marvel IP into the public consciousness. That's what the show is trying to do. Now, the MCU is definitely not comic accurate. No one messes up with that. So my point is, yes, is it the most accurate? No, because it's an alternate timeline. So what's good about this show is that it appeals to another audience, to more people getting into Halo, because there's plenty of people that say, I haven't played the games, but I love this show. They're going to seek out the IP, and then they can see the other timeline. That's fine. You see, that's the problem with a lot of fandoms, is that they don't want to allow the most widely appealing IP, or the version of the IP. In other words, the IP sometimes has to adapt in order to appeal to a much broader audience. Now, there are some times when trying to appeal to a broader audience goes wrong, and then the IP loses its specialness. That's not where we are with Halo. And I feel the same thing about a lot of the gameplay stuff with Infinite. Gameplay-wise. Content-wise is another story, but gameplay-wise, going back to the show. So that's why I'm like, he takes off his helmet. Because to a degree, like, let me put it this way. Yes, Mando went 2 seasons before he took off his helmet. However, I think Halo could have gotten away with the perpetually helmeted protagonist pre-Mando. But if they did it now, then Halo would just be labeled as a ripoff of Mandalorian. So you really, per se, right now, I don't think we can afford to have him perpetually in his helmet. Second off, that's a great way to indicate this is not in the regular timeline. Takes off his helmet. Second off, he's taken off his helmet in the books many times. Granted, it's a lot to get used to, but he took his... Wait a second. His helmet came off in the games. Look up the Halo 4 legendary ending. You see like this part of the face. He took off his helmet in the games. I don't know why. What? And then at that point, that kind of transitions into my final point. And this is like the weakest argument, I think. It's just people just don't like 343, which I understand. And there are a lot of decisions that 343 has made with Halo that I dislike strongly. However, a lot of the campaigns that they've done, I've enjoyed. I enjoyed Halo 4. To a degree, I enjoyed Halo 5. Loved Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite is like up there with Reach with my favorite Halo campaign. But I think just hating an entire thing just because it's made in collaboration with one company that you happen to disagree with, I think it's a little much and a little disingenuous. Because let me put it this way. A lot of the also really good innovations of Halo in terms of the story have been done by 343. That's what I'm going to say on that point. Going back, if you just hate 343, that is totally fine. You're allowed to do that. But it gets very disingenuous. It gets to the same point where I've had the same argument with people critiquing Zack Snyder, because there are people that like absolutely hate his Superman, ignore all of these important plot points. And when you ask, why don't you like Snyder's Superman? I just don't like Zack Snyder. There you go. You just lost that argument. That's my issue there. Now, once again, I acknowledge that 343 has made some big blunders in terms of Halo. And I will be the first to admit that not everything, I hated Halo 4's multiplayer. Too much like Call of Duty. I liked Halo 5. I'm upset about the content drought when it comes to Halo Infinite multiplayer and the progression system and basically all the upsetness, I guess, that came from Halo Infinite. I definitely agree with, but I don't hate everything. That's the other thing is that that's the other thing also. A lot of people just hate 343 because they're not Bungie. That's another argument that in my mind, I guess refutes their argument. So that's my argument on why I think the Halo show is good. Why I think those arguments are bad. Now let me show why I think the Halo show is good. My argument, number one, it shows the Spartan program for how shady it actually is. It shows the UNSC for how shady it actually is. It shows Oni for how shady it actually is. Because it's well documented in the lore, pre and post 343, that the UNSC is pretty shit. They're not all these saints. Second off, it shows how indoctrinated the Spartan program is. I mean, the Spartan candidates are, which I definitely really like. The armor, weapons, sounds, and Covenant look fantastic. Everything looks really, really, really good. It looks like a Halo show. Like there's a scene where the hunter worms attack, and I love that. Visually, the show is fantastic. And I think most fans can agree that visually it's fantastic. It's like in the first episode, they had the shield recharge sound. I was like, oh, yay. I'm slowly waiting for them to bring in the main Halo theme, but I think they will. I think this season is gonna at one point have that scene, maybe even in a Warthog run. We'll see what happens. That's another thing. Warthogs look great. Everything in the show looks fantastic. And it definitely I liked how in the first episode, they play off like the insurrectionist who's never encountered the Covenant think it's like a UNSC trick. I really like that because that was actually part of the lore too, is that it wasn't very widespread in some areas that the UNSC was at war with the Covenant. Even in 400 Dawn, they touch on this when the kids don't even know the Covenant exists. They just see all these security cameras of all of a sudden okay, humans and UNSC and insurrectionists are teaming up against this threat. What is that big dinosaur monster? So that's what I like about it. And then I'm pretty happy with the Chief and Cortana still have that relationship, even though it's a different actor. I definitely like the way Chief and Cortana interact. First off, Jen Taylor's back as Cortana. I have her autograph on my helmet and energy sword. That was fantastic. I was like, oh, this is so cool. It's Jen Taylor. So I like how they at least brought her back to play Cortana. That's great. Now, in terms of, I've mentioned what I don't like, and it's all Quan and Miranda Keys are the two things that I don't like. Everything else I'm pretty happy with, especially Parangoski, because she's just as mean as she is in the show, in the books. Trust me, that's exactly how she is. So that's where I'm going to leave it. My point is, remember, guys, this is now I understand some. More criticism is that apparently in the show everyone's naked and the camera keeps panning to people's rears. So I'm like, what? That's the other criticism that I see is very valid. It seems to have an obsession with that region. So I'm just going to leave it right there. But okay. Oh, one more thing I really liked: the gore. I really like. There's a scene where a Marine takes a couple rounds from the needler. And for those of you that don't know or haven't played the games, the needler is a weapon that shoots pink needles. And then when you get like a certain number of them, I think it's like 3 or 4 or 5 or something like that, on an unshielded opponent, there's an explosion of pink mist. When the Marine gets hit in the show, he vaporizes. Oops, sorry. And it's like when the Chief curb stomps the elite and is punching his face, you see like purple blood getting on the armor. So I'm like, oh, this is detail oriented. This is so great. So that's the other thing I like. Okay, now going back to to wrapping up, a little closing thoughts. Okay, guys, I know there are some things that anger people. There are some things I agree with, something that I disagree with. But think about it this way: this show is how we get people into Halo. Now, granted, here's the other thing. So this show is already authorized for a season 2. And what's interesting about that, what's good about that, as a matter of fact, because it gives them a chance to address some of our criticism. Now, if in season 2 they still don't address the valid criticism, I'm going to be a little more peeved. And I'll be a little more with the fans that are upset. But for right now, I'm like, okay, there's something. For the most part, I think it's a good show. But going back to what I was saying, if they address the feedback, great, because that could happen. Season 2 could be fantastic. There are plenty of shows where season 1 was slow and maybe then season 2 is great. So I'm going to give you that. If they don't, then you can be upset, because then it's upsetting. So in the meantime, try and enjoy the show. That's all I say. Try and enjoy the show, and don't call me or anyone else a corporate shill if I just happen to say, I like this show. Here's what I like. Here's what I don't like. I'm allowed to like what I like. And one of the mantras of this channel is like what you like. You can like Zack Snyder. You can hate Zack Snyder. You can like the Halo show. You can hate the Halo show. You can think Marvel's better with DC and vice versa. Just like what you like. Be respectful. That's it. All right, guys. Hope you guys at least. I hope this video, like, at least encourage you guys to like look at the show with more open eyes, because that's all I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to make sure that more people get into Halo, because it's a fantastic game. It's my favorite game series of all time. It's the first fandom that I really got into, the first like IP that I really took the time to learn the lore. That's why I have my Halo encyclopedia from even pre the new one. The new one's fantastic. I may do a review of it for next week's video. But in the meantime, just enjoy Halo. And let me put it this way: if you don't like the game, if you don't like Infinite, that's fine. MCC. There's enough Halo that you can enjoy the IP. You don't have to like say, I'm done with Halo forever. No. You can enjoy the whole IP. There's many different things. There's books. There's comic books. Fantastic. I've covered a few of them on Under Two Capes. There's comic books. There's movies too. You have Nightfall and Form to Dawn and Fall of Reach. Fantastic. Fall of Reach is animated. Really great. Then there's this show. So just try to look at more in the positive sense. That's what I try and do when I look at things I don't like. I try and look at like, okay, what did it do right? What did it do wrong? Too many people are treating the show like it didn't do anything right. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to leave it at that. Feel free to comment below your thoughts. I'd love to start a nice respectful debate. Emphasis on respectful. And stay heroic, everyone. I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.